By the time they emerged, she was already there, standing in the sun, her red cloak billowing like flame, her face still hidden behind the veil. Zimaif narrowed her eyes. Who dares? The woman lifted her veil. Gasps echoed. Even the trees shivered. Natazi stepped back. For standing there was Amarachi. His former lover. The one he'd abandoned 3 years ago on the eve of her father's burial. The one whose brother swore vengeance. You remember me, Natazi? She asked, her voice calm. Because I never forgot you. Mama Zimaif's jaw clenched. And the wind howled again. The silence in the courtyard was so thick, it choked the air. Amarachi stood like a red flame against the pale stone. Her veil now gone, her dark eyes burned with a rage that had aged like old wine, richer, deeper, more dangerous than before. Natazi stared at her, every nerve in his body tightening. He had not seen her in 3 years. Not since the night he vanished without a word. Not since he betrayed her. Zimaif watched the storm building in front of her. Her eyes did not blink. Her fingers remained wrapped loosely around her staff, though the gem at its top began to glow faintly, warning. Who is she? Zimaif asked, her voice low, deadly. Natazi's mouth was dry. Her name is Amarachi. Amarachi stepped forward, never looking at Zimaif. No, tell her who I truly am. Natazi flinched. His shoulders sagged with the weight of guilt. She was once my betrothed. Zimaif's gaze turned to ice. You're what? The woman who waited. 3 years earlier, in the coastal village of Umadam, Natazi had lived a life of dirt and dreams. Poor but clever, charming but hungry. Amarachi was the village princess, daughter of Chief Maduka, the girl everyone said he would never reach. But he had reached her. Through letters. Through stolen walks in the mangroves. Through whispered poems. And when her father had died, leaving her the last heir of the Maduka name, Natazi had promised to marry her. To stand beside her and rebuild her family's legacy. Then, on the night before the wedding, he vanished. No letter. No trace. Nothing but silence. And a month later, word reached Umadam that he had been seen in the far north, living among spirits and shadows, serving a mistress older than time. Amarachi had waited. Then grieved. Then turned to fire. The confrontation. I came, Amarachi said now, turning to Zimaif at last, to take back what is mine. Zimaif did not move. You dare to enter my house, she said coldly, on my wedding week, and claim a man who has already spoken his vows. He vowed to me first, Amarachi snapped. And broke it. And you reward that with gold and glory? Amarachi's voice rose. Do you not see what he is? A coward. A traitor. A child who runs from his shadow. Natazi stepped forward. Amarachi, please. But Zimaif raised her hand. Let her speak. Amarachi laughed bitterly. I will do more than speak. I will curse him. With every tear I shed on that cursed beach. With every prayer I choked down at midnight. With the blood of my father's name. Zimaif walked toward her slowly. You were wronged, yes. But that does not give you claim to a man who walked away. Amarachi met her eyes. And you think you own him? I own nothing, Zimaif said. But I have earned everything. The air pulsed between them like a drawn sword. Then Amarachi pulled something from her dress, a white stone, etched with an ancient sigil. Zimaif's eyes widened for the first time. That is the stone of Okwut, Amarachi said. The same your family once used to bind spirits into silence. Zimaif's voice dropped to a whisper. Where did you get that? It was buried with my father. You thought your ancestors were the only ones with secrets. Amarachi threw the stone to the ground. It cracked in half. Thunder split the sky. The curse unleashed. Instantly, the wind turned violent. The garden's trees bent backwards. The sky darkened with clouds that seemed to bleed. Zimif spun toward Natazi. She has broken a seal. This place is no longer safe. Natazi grabbed her arm. What do we do? Zimif's voice was urgent. The spirits of betrayal are being called. If they smell weakness, they will consume us both. But I didn't betray her out of malice. Zimif shouted, intent does not matter to spirits. They turned toward Amarachi, who stood still as stone. Around her, the air shimmered with heat and sorrow. From the broken stone, smoke rose, and with it, a shape. A woman's face. No, half a face. The other half was bone and ash. The spirit of Enyenryu the Forsaken, goddess of jilted brides. She floated above the cracked stone, eyes glowing red, mouth sewn shut with golden thread. Zimif bowed slightly. She comes. She judges. Natazi stood frozen. Enyenryu's head turned slowly toward him. Then toward Amarachi. Then toward Zimif. 3 paths. 3 sins. 3 possible punishments. The choice. The spirit raised a skeletal hand and pointed, first at Zimif. Your sin is power without mercy, whispered a disembodied voice. You have used love as armor. Then to Amarachi. Your sin is vengeance twisted from pain. You seek justice, but you wield wrath. Then, to Natazi. Your sin is cowardice disguised as survival. Natazi fell to his knees. Then judge me, not them. I broke the vow. I left her. Spare them. But the spirit did not grant mercy. Instead, it gave them a task. In 3 days, she said, you must prove whose claim is strongest, love, legacy, or truth. 3 trials. 1 winner. 2 shall lose everything. Then she vanished, leaving behind only ash. And silence. Zimif's warning. Later that night, in the Hall of Stone, Zimif sat alone at the ancestral table. Natazi entered quietly. You should sleep, she said. I can't. You've brought a storm into my home, Natazi. And it has no intention of leaving quietly. I didn't know Amarachi would come. I never meant for any of this. Zimif's eyes were tired, but sharp. Meaning means nothing now. You have become a symbol. To her, you're a broken promise. To me, you are a bridge to the future. To the spirits, you are conflict. He sat beside her. What happens if I fail these trials? You lose everything. And if I win? She turned to him, voice trembling for the first time. Then you may gain more than you ever imagined. Or become something no man should ever be. He looked into her eyes. Do you believe in me? She didn't answer. Not with words. Instead, she leaned forward and pressed her forehead to his. For the first time, she whispered his name with warmth. Natazi. And the wind outside howled in reply. The gold chamber was not made of gold. Not exactly. It was carved from the bones of a fallen meteor, laced with ancient bronze and polished to a mirrored shine so radiant it reflected not just faces, but truths. Only 2 people had ever entered it and lived. Mama Zimif was one of them. Tonight, Natazi would be the 3rd. The first trial, the test of memory. The spirit Enyenryu had decreed 3 trials, love, legacy, and truth. Each contender, Zimif, Amarachi, and Natazi, would be tested not by judges, but by the world itself, shaped by their past and the weight of their soul. Tonight's trial was truth, and it would be faced alone. At the stroke of midnight, the mansion gong tolled once. Natazi stood before the gold chamber, dressed in simple white cloth. No beads. No staff. Just a single anklet made from red thread, blessed by the high priest of Ogyugbo. Zimaif stood beside him, cloaked in black. "You don't have to do this," she said softly. He looked at her. "I do." A pause. "Will you wait for me?" he asked. Zimaif smiled faintly. "I have waited through decades, betrayal, and fire. What is one more night?" Then the doors creaked open. And swallowed him whole. Inside the chamber. There was no ceiling. The sky above was filled with shifting stars that blinked like watching eyes. The floor was a perfect mirror, his every step echoing in silent waves. Then the lights dimmed. And the room transformed. Suddenly, he was standing on the shores of Yumadim, his village. The smell of ocean salt and cassava filled his nostrils. It was as real as any memory. Ahead of him, a younger version of himself stood beside a weeping Amarachi. It was the night before the wedding. The moment he fled. He moved closer. He wanted to shout, "Don't go. Stay with her." But his younger self was deaf to him. The scene played again, exactly as it had happened. "Amarachi, do you love me?" Young Natazi, I don't know." "Amarachi, then don't marry me. Don't make me a widow of the living." Young Natazi, "I'm sorry." And he walked away. Older Natazi sank to his knees. "I should have stayed," he whispered. "I should have been better." Suddenly, the scene shifted. Now, he stood in the courtyard of the Iron Mansion, during his wedding to Zimaif. But the crowd was faceless. The throne was empty. And beside him stood a version of Zimaif, but young. Barefoot. Blood on her hands. "Do you think you can carry me?" she asked. "What? Do you think you can love a woman made of stone and fire? A woman who has buried more than she has birthed?" Yes. I can try." "You'll need more than trying. The mirror cracks." Suddenly, the mirrored floor beneath him split. He fell. Down through images of his life, begging for food, stealing to survive, kissing Amarachi under the mango tree, bowing before Zimaif's gates, clutching the charm Ezin gave him. Then darkness. Then a voice. "You cannot love two women and belong to neither." It was the voice of Enyenwu. "You must choose not with words, but with truth." Then a single question formed in golden fire. "Whose memory haunts you more, Amarachi's love, or Zimaif's gaze?" Natazi's lips trembled. "I don't know." "Lie," the spirit hissed. He clutched his chest. "I don't want to hurt them." Another lie. The fire blazed, searing his skin. Then he screamed. "Zimaif." The flames cooled. He fell to the ground, sobbing. "I think of her when I wake. Not for her beauty. Not for her power. But because I fear failing her. And I don't know if that's love, or reverence." There was silence. Then. Truth accepted. The doors behind him swung open. He was free. Back in the real world. Zimaif stood alone in the courtyard, eyes fixed on the stars. The night was still, but not calm. Equim appeared behind her. "He's returning." She turned, just as the gold chamber's doors opened and Natazi stumbled out, covered in sweat, his white cloth singed, eyes wide. He looked like a man who had survived something no language could capture. She ran to him. Caught him. He didn't speak. She didn't ask. She simply placed her palm on his chest. His heart was still beating. Amarachi's watch. From the rooftops, Amarachi watched through enchanted glass. She saw how Zimaif touched him. How he allowed her. And for the first time, Amarachi understood. This trial was already lost. She turned to the priestess standing beside her. Prepare me for the second one, she said. I will not lose twice. There are rooms in every great house that are never spoken of. Rooms built not with stone, but with silence. In Mama Zimaev's mansion, that room was called the Womb of Ash. The second trial, the test of legacy. At dawn, the spirit Enyenwu returned, not with thunder, but with stillness. No clouds. No wind. No birdsong. Only her voice, whispered through the morning mist. The second trial begins. Show not what you desire to leave behind, but what you will make others carry when you are gone. This was the trial of legacy. Not of titles. Not of blood. But of impact. In the council hall. The Iron Mansion's council hall. A vast domed chamber lined with ancestral masks and golden scrolls, had not been used in 20 years. Today, it was opened. Zimaev sat on one end of the obsidian table, draped in deep purple robes that shimmered like rain-soaked charcoal. On the opposite side sat Amarachi, clad in red and silver, her hair bound in iron coils. Her eyes were calm, but sharp as shattered glass. Nadazi sat in the center, between them, in silence. In front of them were 3 scrolls. Zimaev's Book of Holdings, a ledger of every school, clinic, orphanage, and farmland she had built across the regions. Amarachi's Petition of Justice, a record of land seized, blood spilled, and promises broken by Zimaev's expansion. The future deed, a blank scroll. The spirit would write on it only when the truth had been revealed. The trial would not be decided by spirits alone. It would be decided by the evidence, and the past. Amarachi's case. Amarachi stood first. She raised her father's walking staff, passed down through the Meduka line. My name is Amarachi, daughter of Chief Obi's Meduka, heir to Yumadim's ancestral lands. When I was 7, I watched as your agents, she pointed to Zimaev, drove my people from the palm groves. You claimed it was compensation for debts owed. But no court heard our voices. You turned our shrines into solar farms. You gave us schools, yes, but no power to shape our own futures. Her voice did not tremble. You speak of legacy, Mama Zimaev. But what is a legacy built on the bones of the unheard? Murmurs rippled through the room. Zimaev did not respond. Amarachi unrolled a scroll with 30 names. These are the women whose homes were bought, whose husbands vanished, whose sons were arrested, all during your expansion. Some call it empire. I call it burial. She turned to the spirit's shadow on the wall. I do not seek revenge. I seek reckoning. Zimaev's response. Zimaev rose slowly. Her eyes glinted with iron resolve. I do not deny what was lost. But I ask, what was gained? She motioned to her book of holdings. Pages flew open magically, revealing images, maps, and blueprints. When I was born, girls were traded for yams. Today, they inherit land. When I was 15, I watched my friend die from childbirth with no clinic for miles. Today, there are 6 hospitals bearing my name. She turned to Nadazi. When your father died drunk in the gutter, it was my shelter that took you in. When your mother's grave was flooded, it was my engineers who drained the village marsh. The room was quiet. I am not innocent. But I did not come to this world to be innocent. I came to build. And no kingdom was ever built without blood. Then, without being prompted, she turned to a wall, and tapped it. A secret panel opened. Behind it was a chamber none had seen in decades. The Womb of Ash. Inside, the air was thick with memory. At the center of the room lay an urn, sealed with wax and wrapped in white linen. Zimaev stepped forward, slowly unwrapping it. This, she said, is the urn of my only child. Gasps filled the room. Nadazi felt his breath hitch. Zimaev did not cry. I bore her at 19. A girl of fire and wind. But she was taken by poison, meant for me. Her father was a warlord. He cursed her from birth. I buried her myself, and I swore, no one would suffer her fate again. She turned to Amarachi. Not even you. Amarachi stared at her, stunned. You had a daughter. I had a purpose, Zimaiv said. And that purpose became my legacy. The spirit's shadow flickered. The blank scroll before them began to glow. Letters formed. One built with vision. One fought with truth. But only one knows how to shape pain into protection. Then, a symbol appeared, Zimaiv's mark. She had won the second trial. Amarachi did not scream. She did not protest. She simply bowed her head. Zimaiv approached her. I did wrong by your people, she said. I will amend what I can. But know this, legacy is not about being remembered. It is about what remains when we are gone. Amarachi nodded once. Then let what remains between us not be hate. Zimaiv extended her hand. Amarachi took it. And in that gesture, generations of war softened, if only a little. The night sky was clear, too clear. The stars sat like watching eyes, silent, sharp, knowing. Somewhere deep within the Iron Mansion, the trial of love was beginning. But unlike the first two, this trial would not take place in a court or garden. There would be no scrolls. No witnesses. This final test was not about truth or legacy. It was about the heart. And it belonged to Nadezi alone. The warning. Before midnight, the spirit Enyenryu appeared at Nadezi's door, not as a full figure this time, but as a shadow on the wall, stretching long and thin like grief. You must choose, she whispered. Not between women, but between paths. He stood before her, barefoot, trembling. What paths, he asked. One leads to freedom. One leads to devotion. And one leads to death. You may walk only one. I don't understand. You will. And the shadow vanished. The dream veil. When the clock struck 12, the dream veil descended, an ancient enchantment cast over the entire mansion. It forced sleep upon everyone, except the one being tested. Zimaiv collapsed mid-prayer in the ancestral room. Amarachi, while sharpening her blade, fell into a trance. Only Nadezi remained awake, guided by candlelight toward the sanctum of lovers, a secret room shaped like a spiral, its walls covered in dried rose petals, wedding rings, and broken combs from the women Zimaiv had outlived. There, a golden basin of water stood in the center. And beside it, 2 cups. One filled with clear water. The other, thick, red palm wine. A voice echoed from the ceiling. Drink the water, and you are free. Drink the wine, and you remain, as her chosen. Spill them both, and she dies. Nadezi's breath caught. Who dies? But the voice did not answer. Visions from the heart. He knelt before the basin and closed his eyes. Suddenly, the room filled with images. Amarachi smiling under a mango tree, her hands dusted with yam flour, her voice humming the lullaby she once sang to goats. Zimaiv, on the night of their union, weeping quietly into her own hands, alone in the moonlight, whispering, I am tired of being worshipped. I want to be known. Then, another image. One he had never seen. A child, with Zimaiv's silver eyes and Amarachi's cheekbones, running barefoot across the compound. Laughing. Who is this? He asked aloud. And a voice answered. A future that will never exist, unless you choose. The 3 paths. The candlelight flickered violently. On the wall, 3 doors appeared. Each had a symbol. A bird with broken wings, freedom. A ring bound in flame, devotion. A cracked mirror, death. He had to choose. But first, he had to confront what he truly wanted. Confrontation of the soul. The room shifted again. This time, he stood before a mirror, but instead of his own reflection, he saw three versions of himself. One wore a traveler's cloak and smiled with peace in his eyes. One wore royal robes and stood beside Zimif on a golden throne. One was alone, face buried in bloodied hands. Each spoke. The wanderer, you were never made for palaces. Take your freedom. Start anew. The king, she saw something in you no one else did. Honor that gift. The broken, you think you can escape consequence. Every choice leaves a wound. Nadazi stepped back. I don't want to hurt them, he said. The broken laughed. You already have. The decision. He returned to the basin. Looked at the cups. His hands hovered. He reached for the water. Stopped. Then reached for the wine. Paused. Then he did something none expected. He poured both into the basin. And whispered. I will not choose between freedom and love. I choose to stay, but on my terms. Not as heir. Not as worshipper. But as a man. The basin shimmered gold. And the room trembled. Awakening. Zimif gasped awake. Amarachi sat up, eyes wide, sweat on her brow. In the courtyard, the spirit Enyenryu descended in full form, her two-faced visage glowing with celestial light. She spoke to all. The boy has chosen not a path, but a new road. He has rejected the fate written for him, and in doing so, has rewritten yours. She turned to Zimif. He will not be your king. But he will be your mirror. To Amarachi. He will not be your husband. But he will carry your name with honor. To Nadazi. You have passed all trials, and now, you must lead them both into a future without chains. She touched his forehead. And vanished. A new dawn. At sunrise, the mansion bells rang, not for mourning, not for marriage. But for renewal. Zimif stepped down from her ancestral seat and handed Nadazi her staff. I will still guide, she said. But from behind. Amarachi placed her father's staff beside it. I will protect. And watch. Nadazi stood between them. Not as king. Not as captive. But as a bridge between legacies. Legends say when a person walks through fire and lives, they are either chosen, or cursed. After the trials, Nadazi was neither king nor servant. Not husband. Not captive. But something more difficult. Something more dangerous. He had become the witness. And in the land of gods, that meant only one thing. Balance must be paid.